Well, you're all very welcome to another episode of the Employee 360 podcast, which is sponsored by Premier Life. And I'm delighted we have a great panel of guests again here today. We've got Patrick Condren, who's CIO at Surf Accounts. Blanaid O'Regan, she's the Director of People and Culture in Siro. And we've got Paul Carroll, who's formerly a Director of Business Development at CPL. And we'll be going to each of you in a couple of minutes just to get your insights into the nature of employee and business these days, and how we get the best out of employees, and also how we give the best to employees, because work itself takes up so much of our lives that it can't be drudgery anymore. We're no longer going down into the mines to start trying to dig out coal. But as always, my special guest every week is Mark Corkery. And Mark, last week we looked at the difference it makes to employees to work in an environment where they're looked after in a fully rounded way. But is this all that employees need? Oh, sorry, Mark, you're on mute there.
Excuse me. So first of all, Breandán, I'd like to welcome everybody to the podcast. So Breandán, life throws different curveballs at us all the time, and our ability to cope with them can depend on how prepared we are for change. So significant change always alters the way employees think. And one day you're thinking about the future, your career, your holidays, your family, and all the really good things. Then a major event like COVID occurs, or illness and death. And what I find is these events cause employees to revert back to, say, safety mode, and long-term plans go out the window. And for me, the way you can deal with significant life events like this is to do what I call what-if scenarios. And this allows you to take comfort now that you've thought about the possible downsides and say have a contingency plan for what's in place in the future.
Okay. And you help employees with their financial wellness. But do you think is lack of knowledge the only factor that stops them being successful with finances then, if that's a stress for employees?
Lack of knowledge is definitely a problem, but for me, worse still is too much knowledge. So if, say, for instance, if knowledge is all you need, then Google will be the solution to all our problems. So for me, knowledge must be simple and personalized. And so when I do financial coaching, I use the phrase simplicity, accountability, and action. So for instance, when I look at my own fitness, I go to my trainer each week. They break down simply what exercise I need to do and what's good for me. But that for me is only half the battle. If I didn't turn up to the class, I might not get started and do the exercise. So the accountability of turning up for the class makes me take action, and the benefit from the simplicity of the knowledge that my trainer gives me. So to answer your question, Breandán, your small amounts of simple knowledge combined with accountability and action leads to much better results.
Oh, okay. Now, from my perspective, because Mark, I'm no expert in any field like that, but certainly for me as an employee, I'd be thinking of protecting and holding what I have and all of that, and security. Being secure, I think, is a big problem. Is that something that you look at from the advice side of it then for employees?
Yeah, and I think security is one of the main things that people look for. And so I suppose the theme for the podcast today is what I wanted to know is, what do you do to help employees feel more secure? How do you help them understand the benefits that you provide in the event of life changes? So in financial coaching, I call this protecting your money.
Okay.
And protecting your money, say for me, is all about knowing that if something could go wrong, you have all your bases covered. So when I do what I call protecting your money, I do what I call a 7-step protect your money action path. And this exercise helps employees know that if something goes wrong, they can deal with the shock. So what I'd love to hear from the panel today is, how do you help your employees feel secure?
Okay. And again, listen, your area of expertise, Mark, is finances, but the guys here will be looking broadly at security. And it's a big issue for sure. We need to feel, I suppose, that we're valued at work, that, this is somewhere we can feel settled with friendships and with a path forward and all of that. Security is certainly a big issue. in a wide way. Now, before we get into that aspect of it, I want to find out a little bit about the backgrounds and the companies that and the people that we have here. Now, let me start with you, Blanaid O'Regan. You're the Director of People and Culture in Siro. Tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us about Siro. And just listen to lads, we're a year and a half at this, and the mute, that's two of you now that I'll have to put in the Cunha Donna. The mute is still on, Blanaid.
God, you're right, yeah. So Siro's a joint venture, ESB and Vodafone, and we are rolling out broadband around the country. So it's a countrywide project. We're using the ESB network to roll out broadband. And I've been with the company since inception in 2015. And so it was very important as a joint venture with two two large parents that we develop our own culture, and that as we were hiring our own people, that we developed our own identity, which is, I think that's a common problem for joint ventures, that you're kind of holding, you're kind of influenced by both parents, and you're trying to you don't always have, as a small company, I suppose we have that kind of you're a small company, but you've got maybe there's bigger expectations because of having large parents.
And how did you set about carving out that culture then?
Okay, so sorry, I have a dog here, and anyway, he's fine. So how did we set about it? It was initially it's setting up your just talking about finance. I suppose it's always important to set up your pension scheme and your disability, sickness plans and all of that. So I suppose that's kind of like a standard, and so initially we worked with the parents, what had been recommended by parents, or relationships that and then as we've evolved, we've developed our own plans and put our own systems in place, and some things work and some things don't work. So for example, just with pension, we found we didn't really need a broker, because we just worked directly with the pension provider. Yeah, just as an example. Yeah, sorry, I'm going to have to let.
Sure. While you're dealing with the dog there, let me go to Patrick Condren.
Yeah,
I'll come back to you on that.
That's great.
Yeah, I'll come back to you on that. Patrick, you're the CIO at Surf Accounts. I'm a big fan of Surf Accounts. I have to say, we use it here in the business. It's I think it's a great product altogether. Do you have many people working there, Patrick? And before you start now talking silently, I'd say you'll have to take the mute off as well.
I had mute off the whole time and just put it on. I did the opposite. Yeah, we have about 100 people here, but in the last week we've announced a major merger. So we've now joined forces with BrightPay. Okay. So I think our combined company now will be about 200 people.
Wow.
But before this, I was with I was with Sysnet for about 4 years, and Sysnet had about 350 people. Before that, it was Dun & Bradstreet, which would have a couple of thousand, and before that, it was Pfizer, which had like 150,000 around the world. So I've got quite a step down in terms of genesis of understanding people, and also really fortunate to have worked in so many large companies at a global level, based in the HQ in New York, or whether it was in the UK, or various places I've been. So I've seen all sorts of different cultures. And interestingly enough, in Pfizer about 16 years ago, I was supplied with a personal telepresence to get my own work-life balance correct, because at that stage I was living in Glasgow, but I had a global role. And that telepresence now is what we would call Zoom.
Okay.
So they were thinking very early on about what work-life balance was and how to get self-actualization, if you want to refer back to Maslow. So it's on Maslow, we should say. So it's about how do we get people to perform at their very best. And you start that process by taking away what a good friend of mine, David Long, who's a HR professional, would say was the hygiene factors. So you take away things like, food, water, basic salary. Am I going to be able to afford a holiday? So if you can bring people out of worrying about the mundane and start bringing them up that pyramid, where they start getting to focus on things like esteem and belonging and self-actualization, if you get people up there, that's where you get high performance. Mm-hmm. And here's the irony, or the unusual thing, in my opinion: it doesn't cost a lot of money to do that. It takes a lot of effort from a management perspective to actually build a culture that people feel that they can be successful in. Okay. And people, especially here, if I can be so bold and maybe a little bit negative to say that it seems to be something we have difficulty with in Ireland, more so than I've seen in the US or in the UK, or indeed in Australia.
What's interesting, you seem to be tying up with what Mark has said in terms of security. So you're basically saying if people have a certain level of security, then they'll perform quite well anyway.
So if somebody is worried about whether they're going to make the repayments on their mortgage, let's just go back to basics. Somebody's worried about whether they're going to be able to eat. Are you going to get the best? Are they going to be really in doing their best intellectual work for you? They're not. They're going to be resentful of the fact that they can't pay for their food and that they're hungry. You take it up a step if you want to talk about a mortgage or a rent. Now, given Ireland's kind of unique situation with those problems right now for a lot of young people, put that aside for 1 second. But if people are worried about whether they can make that rent, where's their mind most of the day, especially when they're getting close to that point in time when the rent is due? Is their mind really going to be on whatever strategic imperative you have, or is it going to be, how am I going to make this money? Do I need to sell my car to pay for the rent this week? And the more people get, and the more you can get them to a place where they're secure in their family, in their home, in their food, in their pension, in their other things, the more you can get them out of worrying about that, the more performance you're going to get. And I hate to be that brutal, but the more performance, the more honest intellectual output you're going to get from those people. And the better they will feel about it as well. It's not just about getting that, it's about when people are in that zone where they're really doing their best, you have a very collaborative, team-focused, goal-focused, driven organization that's determined to do the right thing. But if you're underpaying people, you don't get that.
Oh, very interesting. Very interesting. We'll come back to you as well on that, Patrick. There's a couple of points that I'll probe later on, which you may be in relation to age. What kind of a factor is age? Because I do imagine, at certain different stages of our lives, that security is a different issue, or we look at it differently. But before I do get onto that, I want to go to Paul Carroll, formerly the Director of Business Development at CPL. Tell us a little bit about your background and your outlook on this, Paul.
The phrase of the year, by the way, is "you're on mute," just so as you know.
Yes.
Yeah. The CPL was set up by my wife Anne Herity back in 1989, where she walked into a room with a phone and a phone book and a copy of the Golden Pages, and she built it up over the years to over 25,000 people, and to become a PLC that was turning over just over half a billion euros, and what we did was we completely and regularly transformed and pivoted. We set up in a recession, which gave us certain disciplines that I believe stood us well over time. And every recession, we've gone through three recessions, including the fourth being the pandemic. Each time we've come out of them stronger than we went into them. And why? Because we had a very disciplined approach to both cost management and to investment and to working with our customers. So we used to have an expression. It was part of our logo, which was CPL placing people first, and that was a play on words in that we would put people first as in terms of our candidate base. We would be the first to place them in a job, and we would put our staff first and make sure that they felt that they were valued and were very much part of the team. However, I'm going to completely disagree with you guys, which is really going to upset you. In the recruitment business, insecurity is our friend. We don't want people liking their job. We want them looking to us to get better jobs. And then what we want to do is work with the best of clients, and we have the best of clients who are going to attract and retain those people. But ultimately, over time, the only real security that an organization like CPL can offer is that if something goes wrong, we'll get you another job, and we'll get you another job fast, and it'll be as good, if not better, than the one you're in. So I don't fully adhere to this idea that security is good. Actually, for our business, it's not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But what about your own staff, Paul? If they were feeling insecure,
our own staff have an opportunity to succeed and exceed. However, if they don't succeed and exceed, then we have to be very careful about how we manage their exit.
Mm-hmm.
And typically, what will happen with a lot of those people is we will train them and retrain them and retrain them until we get them into the role that they do want. And then we'll go and find that role for them.
Yeah.
So the vast majority of people in CPL are extremely happy. We've got people with us for 25, 22, 18 years.
Mm-hmm.
But we've also got people who last 6 months because recruitment's not for everybody. It's a tough job. It's very fast moving. It's quite sales oriented as opposed to HR oriented. But at the same time, you've got to be able to identify and influence the best people to want to work with your client. And that's the relationship. And it's actually made very clear up front. I give the induction, and this is what I say. I tell them up front, if you're good, you're going to make a lot of money, you're going to do very well, and you're going to be very happy because quite openly, you're going to be helping people get jobs. You're going to change their lives, possibly many times in your career, and you're going to supply them with a wage that will pay for them to get you off your parents' payroll, and ultimately you will be trained and you will succeed. The nice thing about CPL is that we did manage to attract the best of clients, and that meant that we had the opportunities to offer to our candidate base. Now, don't get me wrong, we place about 7,500 people every year. We get 35,000 CVs every month. So we do not delight everybody that comes to us. But the people that we place are the best of the breed. Now, in fact, I hate that term, best of the breed. They're actually the people with the most potential to do a good job in our client company. And very often that's not the best person. It's the person who's got the potential to be the best person.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, very good. Let me go directly to you, Mark, after that. What's your take on that? Insecurity is CPL's friend. Is that something that you balk at, or can you see it from CPL's perspective, but it's different for other companies?
Yes, it's different from all companies, but I can see Paul's explanation there, I suppose, when you're looking at it from a point of view of a company that's probably fast moving and wants people that are kind of very well skilled and want to move up the ladder. Initial security might not be the issue. It might be growth and development within the business and career prospects. So when I talk about security, I suppose I really look at the basics, and I think there, in fairness to Blanaid, I hit on a few things like pensions and finance and stuff like that. So when I look at the basic financial education people need just to pay the bills, get things sorted, and that gives them a base level of security. But I agree then, at that you want employees to kind of start at that level of security and then progress. You don't want, I suppose, people to just realistically say, I want to stay at that level. We'd like for everybody to progress and get retrained and move on. So, and I think Paul also mentioned transformation, which I think is a huge word. And in the coaching world, it's all about taking it to the next level and transformation. So Paul mentioned that in each one of the recessions that had to happen. And I think employees are doing much more transformations now throughout their lives than they had before. And in terms of what Patrick said, again, it was, look, the hygiene factors. It's like going back to my days of college with Maslow's theories of hierarchy and all that, I think we still need to have the basics covered. I don't think anybody wants to wake up in the morning and be worried about the rent or the mortgage or those things. And from my perspective, I suppose, looking at this from an employee's point of view, I think if you can get the bases right, it just leads people to kind of open their minds to whatever career they want, whether that's a fast moving career that's constantly changing jobs and evolving, or staying with one company and doing a really great job within that company.
Okay. But Blanaid, we were chatting earlier and got a little bit interrupted there, but you were focusing on telling us in terms of the culture, how to build a culture. At Siro, well, listening maybe to a little bit of what Patrick has said and what Paul, in terms of first of all, building a base security, and secondly, knowing that a lot of people are on an edge with trying to progress or whatever. But what is the culture, and how did you build it at Siro?
So yes, when we started first, we brought in quite a lot of senior people. We needed to get moving fast. We had money that needed to not so much be spent, but we needed to mobilize quickly. So as a result, in the very early days, and we run a lot of engagement surveys, people felt like they weren't confident about the amount of career opportunity that was going to come up. But as the years have gone on, as some of the senior, lots of them are consultants, moved off, we've been able to create opportunities. So yes, absolutely, that's something that occupies people's minds about how do I get on. And I suppose as a company, counter to what Paul wants, you're trying to hold on to people and give them a view of that there's a future there, and they're going to have longevity. I agree. Just we've talked a bit about money and money being on people's minds, and I think so it's at all levels of the organization, and sometimes I think there's a lot of people that don't, especially people who've been successful, maybe have never had to take the time to really understand about how to manage their money. So they're always looking for more money, and it's probably a particular category of employee. It's not everybody. And some, it would be kind of usual in sales. Some are just, it's part of their DNA. They're motivated by money, and I guess if they weren't, you might have a problem. And then others are looking for more fulfillment within their job. But you're trying to, educating people on money can be difficult, because if the ones that are looking for money don't want to know about it, being educated on it, they're just looking at how do I get more. And a lot of people that are just getting on, fulfilled with their job, nothing's perfect, probably ups and downs, but a lot of them don't always make the time to think about money. And I agree, and I think it's coming more to the fore that it's something that is occupying more and more people's thoughts, and I suppose just functioning in society. It's probably, well, it's something that as an employer we would be conscious of. So that's, you're talking about culture. So there are two elements. There's other things, like we look at engagement. Particularly in the last while, but all along. Patrick was talking about having started work in Scotland, managing a spread out team. We were, because we're working across the whole country, we've kind of been a little bit location agnostic, so even prior to COVID. So you're trying to find opportunities to pull teams together as well.
I see. And Patrick, picking up on that point that we were chatting about earlier, then the age, is it different strokes for different folks in terms of age, and how you give them that sense of belonging?
It is different, but can I read you something? It's very short. So the children now love luxury. They have bad manners, contempt for authority. They show disrespect for elders and love chatter in places of exercise. Children are now tyrants, not the servants of their households. they no longer rise when elders enter the room. That was Socrates in 399 BC.
Yeah.
So little has changed, right? So the reality is we can say, oh, the kids on the phone, they're not paying attention, they give us back cheek, you know, all of this kind of stuff. Then they get into adolescence and all they want to do is earn enough money to go drinking with their friends on a Friday. Well, not that they've been able to do much of that through COVID times, but you get the point, right? And then it's like we need to find a partner, then we need to find a house, and we need, so the life cycle of a human being, male, female, whatever culture you're in, it's pretty consistent and pretty linear, right? And we expect an awful lot on our young people between the ages of 20 to 35, right? They're expected to wrap up in college, get a career, establish themselves financially, get themselves a house, find themselves a partner, maybe have kids before it's too late, and so on and so forth. And we cram all of that responsibility and pressure onto people at a very tender age. Mm-hmm. So I would have enough, probably from the fact I'm saying this out loud, probably indicates a lot of sympathy for it, and for people to find themselves in that particular age group. Mm-hmm. So if I go back to your question, I better re-ask your question because I just went off on one, so maybe I'll re-ask your question so I'll make sure I actually answer what you've asked me.
Yeah, to re-ask the question essentially is, okay, you've been talking about giving a baseline security so that people can, yes, you know, they can really flourish intellectually. My question is, a workforce, especially like Surf, where you have a large amount of employees, there'll be different people at different stages of their lives, and it naturally enough, I'd imagine, at a more mature stage of your life, you're secure anyway, or close to it, or feel a little bit more secure. Is it more difficult to manage that for younger people, do you think?
It is. So look, you lead by example. You know, it's one of the best ways to lead is by example. And the other one is by being absolutely consistent with what you say and what you do. Right. And those two things are really important for leaders, and you will absolutely undermine your own career path, I suppose, your own status as leader should you not do them. So for example, and I'll go to Sysnet, we're doing it here in Surf, but I'm not long in Surf, I'm only a few months in Surf. But at Sysnet, what we did was we had a large pool of people in our contact services. So people making phone calls, answering customer queries, and doing stuff like that, technical support. So we went through them, and typically the demographic is much younger, like profile of people in there. So we were able to hire into technology, for example. So I hired in BAs, product managers, and I gave people a career path straight out of a contact center, straight into technology. We helped them through an education process, not just our internal training, but actually made sure they took the relevant university or third level qualifications. Some of them were professional certifications we sent people on. So everything from product managers, project managers, a program manager, business analysts, you know, data analysts. We were able to do all of these things. If you look at the people and you provide a career path, you know, if I reach into an organization and there's 20 people answering the phone, and I can get the one right person who's out and take them and show them a career path, I put that person on a much better path through their life in terms of what they can afford, what they can do, how they can look after their family and all that kind of stuff. That's very rewarding. Yeah. But there's 19 other people behind, of which some of them are going to look cynically at what I did and think they're never going to get their opportunity. But I guarantee you 5 to 10 of them are going to go, what do I have to do to get that? And I'm ready to give them that answer. And we'll take them through that, take them through the employee training and all that kind of stuff that's necessary for that. Like I said, about half of my organization when I was in Sysnet came from that route.
Okay. Very interesting. Very interesting. And Paul, let me put a scenario to you, Paul. Say that you and I are longtime friends, and I've got a big company, but I just can't hold on to the good people there. So I'll bring you out for a pint, Paul, and I'll say, listen, you've got to tell me from your experience of dealing with people who are moving careers, how am I going to hold on to my best people? What would you say to me?
Honesty. The key to all employment relationships, all relationships is honesty. Being very clear about what it is you want from them, what you expect from them, what you hope to get out of them, what you hope to get for and from them. And then their honesty to you, because companies aren't always honest, and employees aren't always honest. I worked with Gateway for their first 2 years in existence in Ireland, and we grew from 0 to 1,800 people by the time I left. And I left probably at their peak. And 2 years later, every single one of those people was made redundant. But we'd made lots of promises to those people as to what security that they would have. So the other part of security for me is the employees have to be honest as well. And if I look at my own history, I've had well, I'm about to start my 4th career. I've just joined a company called hEaghra, which is a very small 3-person software company up in Sandyford that provides referral software to companies. Now, this is actually, it's not quite competition to CPL, but it's a similar offer in that what hEaghra have done is they've created an app that allows you as an employer to put on your employee's phone the ability to refer their friends and their network into your company. And the interesting thing from that is that in the Great Place to Work, one of the key decision makers is whether or not your employees are actually referring staff into your company. One of the companies, most companies have an employee referral system that generates about 10% of the hires in a year. We put hEaghra into a client, KPMG, and they've allowed us to use their name, and they went from 10% of professional hires through referrals to 38% in less than a year. So the main core point that I'm trying to make is honesty. This is where we're at. We're struggling, or we're doing really well. It doesn't matter which it is. You keep your staff will live with you and work with you if you're honest with them.
Okay, that's interesting. Mark, we go back to you at the end of this really interesting discussion, I think, on security or insecurity within the modern workforce. Your thoughts on it as we wrap up?
Yeah, just a couple of thoughts there. I suppose when Blanaid was talking about engagement, for me, I think especially in the area of finance and basic security, people don't talk and people don't want to ask questions. So it's engagement in the concept of being able to ask questions or not ask a stupid question or not feel that your question is stupid. Information is everywhere, but I suppose to kind of try and make it down to your own thing. So I suppose I'd encourage more engagement out there in terms of understanding what employees need in terms of financial or their career and everything like that. And that, I suppose, ties in with what Paul is saying. And I agree with him there. You know, sometimes as employers, we all want to do what we want, and we probably need to listen more about what the employee is thinking. And then the employee needs to be honest back with us as well. So that honesty factor is huge, and it is a two-way factor. And I was delighted when Patrick quoted Socrates there, because it is pretty much unfortunately, we have the same problems for many years. And I often consider, how do you improve upon those? But I suppose we're always learning new ways to try and help people to get along there. But I agree with Patrick, there's a generation there that are coming along, and they have probably a lot more to get through in terms of getting a house and getting sorted out financially. And as I said, you spend probably 20 years being educated on how to make money, and you probably only spend a month in your lifetime probably trying to figure out how to keep it. So I try, in my view, it's trying to reverse that, you know, to understand how to keep it as opposed to just make it.
Very good. Well, I want to thank you all. It's been an extremely interesting discussion, and I think one that will occupy the minds for HR people and company directors for a long time into the future, for as long as from here to Socrates and back, maybe Patrick, whether it's security or honesty or all of those elements that are key and important to keeping and attracting the best people. So I want to thank you all. Patrick Condren, CIO at Surf Accounts, Blanaid O'Regan, Director of People and Culture at Siro, Paul Carroll, formerly Director of Business Development at CPL, and of course, Mark Corkery of Premier Life. Until next time, thank you, agus slán.
Thank you. So, agus slán.